They've hurt the past couple of days.
Go on, mama. Go on, mama. Oh, shukran, Sheikh.
Yeah, I got to sit in the chair. I try to dunk the ball, man. Not working out, ain't work out for me.
No. No. No, I was talking to him. Okay.
Sometimes.
Okay. I'll get to it.
That smells
Like us, sit down.
We gotta get ready to go.
Okay. Pleasure to see you. Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum. No, my pleasure. My pleasure. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, we should be good.
Huh? You good? Okay. Okay. Alhamdulillah. Okay. No, it's good.
Alaikum salam.
You know, like when the imam comes up to pray and the muadhin is there, is he supposed to say come to salat before the muadhin calls the come to salat?
No.
He don't have to do that?
I don't know anything that says that he has to do that.
Okay, because a brother asked me today.
No, Aqimus Salah is usually for the Iqamah, not for the Adhan.
Okay, no, not for the adhan.
For the Iqamah.
For the Iqamah, okay.
Usually on the Imam's command, when the Imam is ready.
They said come to salat. Yeah, that's what I was telling the brother that was going to lead the prayer. I said, well, you got to let me know that you are ready to come to salat. He said, well, I've never heard that. I said, well, in Jumu'ah, haven't you heard the Imam say that before we thought to pray? He said, yeah, but usually I've seen Imams come in and just walk in. And,
no, I'm okay. Thank you.
No, maybe the brother right there might. Oh, he got some.
Assalamu alaikum. How you doing? Alhamdulillah.
You feel what I'm saying?
Okay, I'll get to it. I'll get to it.
How you say that word again? You said look down.
Sakata min aini. Ain is my eye. Sakata min aini.
I need the first one. Sakata min aini.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Great, alhamdulillah. If I can get out of Maryland alive, I'll be even better. Okay, inshallah ta'ala. So while you guys are socializing and drinking coffee, I'm gonna continue, inshallah, and you can continue eating and drinking as we talk. We just ask that you take your conversations either outside or you can lower your voice and let us continue, inshallah. So, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen wa salatu wa salam ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. So we were talking about how people have exploited marriage for their own personal gain, benefiting from the many perks of the institution of marriage, such as halal sex, financial stability, personal validation, even the luxury of saying I'm married in the circle of friends so that you don't appear lonely or unmarried, despite the fact that you might be lonely and figuratively you might be unmarried. But the fact of the matter is that we don't want to invest in marriage what it takes to become the institution that it was designed to be. We want what we want from the marriage, but we don't want to put anything into the marriage so that we can make it the institution that it was designed to be. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed a whole surah in the Quran about people that have this mentality. They want to take what they want to take, but they don't want to give what is necessary for them to give. And that's Surah Al-Mutaffifin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَيْلُ لِلْمُطَفِّفِينَ الَّذِينَ إِذَا اكْتَالُوا عَلَى النَّاسِ يَسْتَوْفُونَ وَإِذَا كَالُوهُمْ أَوْ وَزِنُوهُمْ يُخْسِرُونَ. Mutaffifin, these are people who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, woe be to the mutaffifin. Those, إِذَا when people owe them, they want their money in full. But when they have to pay people back, they want to pay you in bits and pieces. They want to give you a little bit here, $5 here, $10 here, $20 there. They want to pay you back little bit by little bit. But when you owe them, nah, I need all my cash. I need all that. I need that today, right? I want it all. I ain't taking no shorts, right? This is similar to people who go into marriage. They want to take everything from the marriage that they can get from it, but they don't want to invest anything into it. You guys follow me? People who don't want to invest anything into the marriage, time, energy, money, all of these things is what the marriage requires. Every marriage requires that. But we don't want to invest anything into the marriage, but we want everything from it. We want all the perks that come with it. And as a result, marriage has become, as an institution, which was once a hallmark of any moral society, even the Islamic community, has become something that people used to take pride in, has now been reduced to a simple heterosexual relationship. This is what marriage is today. Even some of the marriages in the Islamic community, they resemble boyfriend and girlfriend relationships. I know boyfriend and girlfriend relationships that are stronger than some Islamic marriages. Absolutely. I know non-Muslim friends of mine who have been with this person for years. They're not married, they've just been together for years. Have children and function like a married couple. And their relationship, which is a boyfriend-girlfriend relationships, looks better and functions more healthier than many of the Islamic marriages that we have. Marriages that we have in the Islamic community. And I'm sure you guys know the same. So, and this has happened because of the change of people, not necessarily the change of time. It's the people in the time. Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentioned in a line of poetry, he said, "Nu'ibu zamanana wal aibu fina mali zamanina aibun siwana." And we find fault with the time that we living in, but the only fault with the time that we living in is us, the people that are living in that time. People change. And as time begins to progress or time moves forward, people tend to become less religious. There's no doubt that people are much less religious today than they were 20 years ago. Statistically, millennials, these are people that were born from the year 1982 to the year 2000. Anyone born within that time frame is called a millennial. And study has proven that millennials are the most unreligious group of American citizens in our history, in American society. They have no affiliation to any religious group, even Muslims. You have Muslims now, young Muslims who call themselves unmasked, right? These are Muslims who have separated themselves from any mosque or religious institution and are just functioning independently. I don't know how, right? When the Prophet ﷺ gave us clear instructions to stick with the Jama'ah, but we've separated and deviated from that. The Prophet ﷺ said that the shaitan stick with the Jama'ah because the shaitan gets the lone wolf, and we still choose to walk alone by ourselves, not connected to any imam, not connected to any masjid, not connected to any Muslim community, and then we turn around and blame Islam for being dysfunctional. No, you're dysfunctional. Islam is not dysfunctional. The Muslim communities have problems, we face challenges, but we are by far not dysfunctional. You are dysfunctional. Your mentality is dysfunctional. Nonetheless, as time moves forward, people tend to become less religious. And as people become less religious, they become less sincere. They become less sincere, and therefore they take legislative constructs such as marriage for granted. So you take a person who is not really religious, not connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, barely prays, barely has any connection or relationship with the Quran, right? And then you put this person in the institution of marriage. They're not going to respect the rights of the wife or the rights of the husband. They're not, and you know what I mean? Some of us has been in marriages with people like this. Have you ever been in a marriage with a person that's not religious? It's the worst type of relationship to ever be in. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that none of us ever have to experience that. But being in a marriage with someone who is not religious, someone who does not pray, someone who never reads the Quran, someone who doesn't regard the Quran, that the moment an ayat is quoted to the person, they cringe. Yeah, brother, I know that's the ayat, brother. We don't need to quote Quran here. It's like we're Muslims. What else am I going to quote? What else am I going to quote in my home? I'm a Muslim. But this is, those, as I said before, as I said last night, a non-practicing Muslim is the worst type of person to have in your circle. And it's the worst type of person to be married to. The worst type of person, because they don't respect the boundaries. They don't respect what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in place. They don't respect the rights of the husband, the rights of the wife. They don't respect the boundaries. This is the worst type of relationship to be in. So as people become less religious, they begin to take legislative constructs like marriage for granted, and marriage is one of the symbols of Islam. Marriage symbolizes the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as Allah says in the Quran, ذَلِكَ وَمَن يُعَظِّمْ شَعَائِرَ اللَّهِ فَإِنَّهَا مِن تَقْوَى الْقُلُوبِ. That whoever honors the symbols that symbolize the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that is a sign of the taqwa that is in the hearts. So when you put a person in the institution of marriage and you find that they have the utmost respect for the rights of the wife, the rights of the husband, they make sure that they don't violate those rights. They make sure that they stay within the boundaries. They fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with regard to your honor. They fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with regard to your wealth. They fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with regard to your children. This is a person that is an indication of the taqwa, the fear of Allah, the consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the person has in their hearts. And the neglect of these things is a manifestation of a lack of reverence for this deen. And when this happens, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removes his barakah from anything, any entity that we take for granted, including marriage. So now we're going to talk about why we see the marriages the way that they are today. Very few marriages have made it through the certain phases that marriages usually go through to come out on the other end after a few years, after 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, and they have now found marital bliss. Very few of our marriages make it past those stages to get to that phase. All right, and there are a number of phases that marriages go through. I'll give you 5. The first phase of marriage is the honeymoon phase. And this can last anywhere between 2 months to 2 years. That depends on a lot of things. Sometimes it depends on how distant you are, how close you are. Obviously, a long distance relationship, the honeymoon phase is going to last longer because you don't see each other as often, right? Familiarity breeds contempt. Understand that when you're around somebody 24/7 all the time, you are eventually going to see all of the flaws of that person and you're going to dislike that person very quickly. Because once the chemicals, the high wears off, right? Because you high when you're in the honeymoon phase. You drunk off the oxytocin, you drunk off the dopamine, you're drunk. These are all the chemicals that your body releases when you're infatuated with somebody. You don't even see their flaws yet. You don't even see their flaws yet. But once you wake up one morning and you turn over and you look at this person, you're like, man, why in the world did I marry this person? Then know that the high has worn off. The high has worn off. And now you can see the person clearly for who they are, flaws and all. That is when you know you've stepped out of the honeymoon phase into the next phase, which is the tit for tat phase. You trying to change me, right? We tend to think that this marriage would be perfect if you would just be more like me. Why can't you just be like me? I'm perfect. Look at me. I'm the perfect specimen of a spouse. Our relationship would be perfect if you would just be more like me. Do it the way I do it. See, I keep telling you, you don't listen, right? That's the second phase of the marriage, and it's this tit for tat. You pointing out my flaws. Well, you do this. Well, you do that. You kill me. How you trying to correct me on this? But just the other week you was doing. This is that tit for tat phase. This means war. Then after you go through the tit for tat phase, because what you're trying to do is find out who's going to be the more dominant person in the relationship. Absolutely. That's what the tit for tat is about. We're trying to figure out who's going to be the more dominant, who's going to call the shots in the relationship. Instead of people just staying within their space of competency. If I know I'm not good with money, then I'm going to let you have that. I'm give you carte blanche. It's yours. Take care of it. You good with the money. You good with organizing and decorating the house and making the house look. I'm going to give you that. We got to learn how to give each other those spaces. But we fighting for relevance. We fighting for them spaces. Nah, I'm handling the money. But you're not good with money. Stay within your lane of competency. Right? When Prophet Yusuf came out of prison, they wanted to make him the king of Egypt. What did he say? No, place me over the money. Make me the treasurer. I'm good with money. Inni alimun hafidun alim. I'm protective. I'm good when it comes to money, and I know about money. Stay within your lane of competency. If you know you're not good at something, why are you going to fight your spouse to have that space? But we fighting for that position. And then we move on to the third phase of the marriage, where we trying to decide whether we're going to call it quits here or we're going to stick it out. We're looking for some light at the end of the tunnel, some indication whether I should continue on in this situation or should I just pull out and cut my losses from here. And then the fourth phase of the marriage is when you just hang up the gloves. I don't want to fight no more. I'm tired of fighting with you. I give up. Waving the white flag, I give up. I don't want to fight anymore. I'm done. You're right. Right and wrong is not an issue anymore. Because it doesn't matter who's right and who's wrong. All that matters is that we're together. I don't care about who's right and who's wrong. In the war phase, it's all about black and white. Who's right, who's wrong. Well, you're wrong. Just admit it. You're wrong. It's like, but, all right, in this phase, I don't care. I'm wrong. So what? I'm wrong. I still love you. And then once you get past that phase, then you reach the fifth phase of your marriage, which is marital bliss. You've now learned to see your spouse. Marital bliss is, as some of people who speak about marriage, they say it's like wanting to throw your spouse out the window and then catch them at the bottom before they hit the ground. You've been married long enough, then you understand that metaphor. I want to throw you out the window, and I want to run down to the bottom and catch you before you fall. I love you. There's some things about you that get underneath my skin that I can't stand. Nonetheless, I love you, and I'm not going anywhere. Very few of our marriages reach that phase, get to that point. And a lot of times it has a lot to do with what we invest in the marriage. So when this happens, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removes barakah from the marriages. And anything that we take for granted and that we don't value, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removes this barakah from it. And so the marriages function now. We get married, but the marriages don't actually look like and function like the marriages Allah commanded us to have. So let's take a look at some examples of what happens when Allah removes His barakah from something. During the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, men started to take the process of divorce for granted. Men started to pronounce divorce on their wives 3 times in one sitting. You're divorced, you're divorced, you're divorced. Right? The process of divorce is to give the couple an opportunity to reconcile. The way that it's done in Islam is that when a man pronounces divorce on his wife, going through phases before he does that, right? Counseling, arbitration, advice, patience, admonition, and then finally when you get to the point where you realize it's not working and you pronounce the divorce, right? Even after you pronounce divorce, there's a certain way that the divorce has to be pronounced. Like, you cannot be intimate with your wife last night and pronounce divorce on her this morning. Islam does not accept that. The divorce is invalid. It does not count. If your wife is on her menses and she finishes her menses, anytime after she finishes her menses until the next menstrual cycle, within those 2 menstrual cycles, if you are intimate with your wife one time within that period, you are not allowed to pronounce divorce on your wife within that period. You have to wait until she gets on her menses, gets clean from her menses, and then if you want to pronounce divorce on her before being intimate with her, then you are allowed to do so. Anytime in between the 2 menstrual cycles that you are intimate with your wife, you are not allowed to pronounce divorce on her. Islam does not accept that. You do not get to have your cake and eat it too in Islam. You do not be intimate with your wife. You are not intimate with your wife and then turn around and get angry 2 days later and say you're divorced. No. You have to wait until she gets on her menses, is finished her menstrual cycle, is clean, and then pronounce divorce on her before being intimate with her. You guys follow me? The evidence for this is the first ayah in surah number 65, in Surah At-Talaq. Sisters and brothers, this is a go-to ayah, a go-to surah for you. There's a few places in the Quran that you need to know to go to when you're having marital problems. The first surah is surah number 65, Surah At-Talaq, the surah of divorce. The second surah is the Surah Al-Baqarah, surah number 2. And there's a bulk of ayats from like 222 to like 240. Within that range of ayats, all Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deals with is marriage and sometimes divorce. As well as Surah An-Nisa, surah number 4 in the Quran. These are 3 go-to places that you need when you run into marital issues. Okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the first ayat in Surah Al-Talaq, يا أيها النبي إذا طلقتم النساء فطلقوهن لعدتهن وأحصوا العدة. O Prophet, when you decide to divorce your wives, then divorce them at their proper times and count the waiting period. What does he mean by the proper time? Meaning in a clean state where you have not been intimate with her. If you are intimate with your wife and you pronounce divorce on her, this is not the proper time. It's not acceptable. As well as when she is on her menses. It is not permissible for you to pronounce divorce on your wife while she's on her menses. Those are 2 times you cannot divorce your wife. Once is when she is on her menses, and twice, the second time is when she's in a clean state when you have already been intimate with her. You cannot pronounce divorce on your wife in either of those times. Abdullah bin Umar, the son of Umar bin al-Khattab, he pronounced divorce on his wife while she was on her menses. His father, Umar bin al-Khattab, went to the Prophet and told him, the Prophet said, tell your son to take her back and wait till she gets clean, gets off her menses, she's clean, and then gets on her menses again, and then gets clean, and then in the clean state, before he is intimate with her, if he wants to divorce her, then let him do it. Told him to take her back. Meaning that the divorce that he pronounced on her while she was on her menses was null and void. It does not count. Guys, follow me. So those are the 2 times that Islamically you are not allowed to pronounce divorce on your wife. So during the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, when he was the Khalifa, men began to pronounce divorce on their wives more than 1 time. You're only allowed to pronounce divorce on your wife in one sitting 1 time. But men were pronouncing divorce 3 times. So look at what Umar did. Umar radiallahu anhu, he said, كان الطلاق 3 على عهد أبي بكر وسنتين من خلافة عمر. طلاق 3 واحدة. That Ibn Abbas, he said, during the time of Abu Bakr, the 2 years that Abu Bakr was the Khalifa, when a man pronounced divorce on his wife 3 times, it was only counted as 1 divorce. If he said to his wife, you are divorced, you're divorced, you're divorced 3 times, it was only counted as 1 divorce. For the 2 years that Abu Bakr was the Khalifa. And then 2 years into the Khilafah of Umar. And then Umar got up and he addressed the community and he said, إِنَّ النَّاسِ قَدْ اسْتَعْجَلُوا فِي أَمْرٍ كَانَتْ لَهُمْ فِيهِ أَنَاتٍ فَلَوْ أَمْضَيْنَهُ عَلَيْهِمْ فَأَمْضَاهُ عَلَيْهِمْ. Umar radiallahu anhu, he said that I see the men are taking advantage of something that Allah has given them an opportunity to reconcile. Meaning divorce. You're taking this for granted. Allah gave you divorce, pronounced a divorce on your wife 1 time, let her go through the waiting period. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, لا تخرجوهن من بيوتهن ولا يخرجن إلا أن يأتين بفاحشة مبينة. That you should not remove the women from their homes during the iddah period, nor should the women leave. Stay in the same home, stay with the same guy, because that time is for you guys to reconcile. unless obviously there's a hostile situation and being in the same space with the person may not necessarily be the most healthy thing, then that requires a different type of approach. But if it's not a hostile situation, Allah says, do not put the women out of their homes, nor should the women leave their homes during the waiting period. And it's very common in our communities for sister to brother pronounce divorce, and then he moves his stuff out and moves into another home or leaves the house or whatever. Very common. And it leaves very little room for reconciliation, because if you're not in the same space with the person, how are you going to reconcile? And if it's a hostile situation, then arbitration is necessary. You bring someone from your home, from your family, someone from her family, and you sit down and you try to create, a silver lining. Right? As Allah says in the Quran, فَبَعَثُوا حَكَمًا مِنْ أَهْلِهِ وَحَكَمًا مِنْ أَهْلِهَا وَإِن يُرِيدَ إِصْلَاحًا يُوَفِّقِ اللَّهُ بَيْنَهُمَا. Bring an arbiter from her family, one from his family, and if they desire reconciliation, Allah will grant them tawfiq. Allah will give them success to have reconciliation. So if the desire is reconciliation, then Allah will make that happen. But, when you separate yourself from the home, there's very little reconciliation that can happen when it's just, scarce text messages back and forth. How you doing? Not really into the situation. How do you expect reconciliation to happen during that? So Umar radiallahu ta'ala, he said that during the time of Abu Bakr, if a man pronounced divorce on his wife 3 times in one sitting, it was only counted as one divorce, to give him an opportunity to reconcile. Sometimes a man get married, mad, he might say, you're divorced, you're divorced, you're divorced. But he only really means one. So Umar said, during the time of Abu Bakr, if a man did that, it was only counted as one divorce, to give him an opportunity to reconcile. He said, but now, I see that people are taking advantage of it. He says, so from this point forward, any man who pronounces divorce on his wife 3 times, she's divorced irrevocably, meaning she cannot go back to you until she marries somebody else. Why? Because there was no barakah in the divorce process anymore. No one respected the divorce process anymore. So there was no sense in salvaging something that people didn't have any respect for anyway. You follow me? There's no sense in salvaging something, working diligently to protect something that people don't have any respect for anyway. So when you look at our marriages today and you see what is happening with our marriages today, and Allah is the knower of what is in the hearts of man, and you see the way that people play around with the institution of marriage, why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala going to put any barakah in this system when we don't value it anyway? This is why the marriages we see that will crumble in 6 months. You get married and you divorce in 6 months. You divorce after a year. Most people you're divorced in a time when most people in normal situations are still in the honeymoon phase, and you divorced. You're going through a divorce. We know non-Muslims who have boyfriend-girlfriend relationships that have lasted longer than many of our marriages. And we should be ashamed of that. Ashamed. But this is what it is. This is what it is. So there's no barakah in the process of divorce that is designed to help the couple reconcile. So therefore, there was no need for Umar to try and salvage the system that people had no respect for. Just the same, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will remove the Quran from the earth. There will come a time where we will wake up. I pray that we don't reach that time where we're living in that time. I can only imagine what the world would be like if the Quran was not in the world. The only piece of guidance that is untouched, unscathed, unchanged, unaltered, the only piece of divine guidance that we have left in this earth is the Quran. The only book on the face of this earth right now that is unaltered, unchanged by man is the Quran. Can you imagine what this world would look like? People talking about, non-Muslims talking about banned Sharia law. If it was not for Sharia law, this world would be in turmoil. Look at the societies that don't have any mention of God in it. And just imagine, the Quran is the only piece of guidance. Can you imagine what the world would look like if the Quran was not here? But there will come a time where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will remove the Quran, not just from the earth, but even from the hearts of man. Because people won't respect the Quran anymore, so it makes no sense to keep the Quran on the earth. Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said لتنزعن هذا القرآن لينزعن هذا القرآن من بين أظهركم قيل له يا أبا عبد الرحمن كيف ينزع وقد أثبتناه في قلوبنا وأثبتناه في مصاحفنا. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, he said there will come a time where the Quran will be removed from us while we are still here. So some of the Sahaba, some of the Tabi'un said, Ya Aba Abdurrahman, that was his kunya. They said, how could the Quran be removed from us when we have memorized it in our books? Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, he said, يسرى عليه في ليلة فلا يبقى في قلب عبد ولا مصحف منه شيء ويصبح الناس كالبهائم. He said that you will wake up in one night, the Quran will be removed. He said you will wake up one morning and no one will have remembered anything from the Quran. No one. Everyone who has it memorized in their hearts, Allah will remove it from their hearts. And in the books, the mushafs, you will open the mushaf and the Quran will be gone. Subhanallah al-Azim. Can you imagine waking up and you're going to make salah and you can't remember any surah from the Quran? I mean, that happens now. We memorize surahs and then we forget. And usually we forget either because we're not reviewing the surah, we're not reciting it frequently. As the Prophet ﷺ said that the Quran, أَشَدُّ فَلْتَةٍ مِنَ الْجَمَلِ, that the Quran will run away from you quicker than a camel if you don't tie it up. Meaning if you don't constantly review the Quran, you're going to forget it. Or because we're committing sin. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removes His words from our hearts. Why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala going to allow a heart to retain His words and this heart is corrupt? Allah removes the Quran from your heart because your heart is not a place that is deserving of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's words. These are Allah's words. Words that Allah uttered to Jibreel, who uttered to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Every time you read the Quran, every letter, every harf, every letter, every vowel, every sentence in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke. From Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to Angel Jibreel to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then here today on some of our filthy hearts, we're carrying the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He will remove that from our hearts, remove that from our books. He said, وَيُصْبِحُ النَّاسِ كَالْبَهَائِمِ. He said, and people will live like animals. This is what happens when divine revelation is removed from people. And then he recited a verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَلَئِنْ شِئْنَا لَنَذْهَبَنَّ بِالَّذِي أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ ثُمَّ لَا تَجِدُ لَكَ بِهِ عَلَيْنَا وَكِيلًا. And then he recited a verse from the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, and if we had willed, we would remove the revelation that we have given to you, O Muhammad, and then you would find none other than us to be your wakil, to be your guardian. We could remove it. So Allah is already threatening the Prophet ﷺ when he revealed the Quran that if we wanted to, we could remove this Quran that we revealed to you. And then you would find none other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be your helper. So the same will happen with the Quran when we don't value the Quran. Why will the Quran be removed from the earth and from the hearts of people? Because we don't respect it anymore. You have Muslim women now who are waving the flag of feminism, Muslim feminists, right? The term is actually oxymoronic. There's no religion on the face of the earth that has given women more rights than the religion of Islam. Why ever does a Muslim woman need to be a feminist? What are you fighting for? Every right that is due to a woman, even rights that you couldn't even imagine that you are supposed to have as a woman, Allah has already given to you in the Quran. Rights that you have yet to fight for, that you haven't even realized that you have, are in the Quran. But you have Muslim women, coming up with these terms, Muslim woman feminists. There's no feminist religion greater than the religion of Al-Islam. No religion in the world that has given, or no system in the world that has given women rights like the Quran has given women rights. Nonetheless, when we disrespect or we devalue the Quran, Allah will remove it. There's no more barakah in it. Just likewise, Allah will remove the Kaaba. Do you know that there will come a time when the Kaaba will be trampled upon? The same Kaaba that we've made tawaf around, the same black stone that many of our lips have kissed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow the Kaaba to be crumbled, to be crushed, because no one will value the religion of Islam anymore. No one will pray anymore. No one's facing the Qibla anymore. So why keep the Qibla? The Prophet ﷺ mentioned in an authentic hadith collected in Sahih al-Bukhari. Hadith is in Sahih al-Bukhari. No need to ask about the authenticity of the hadith. On the authority of Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, who said that the Prophet ﷺ said, يُخَرِّبِ الْكَعْبَ ذُو سُوَيْقَتَيْن مِنَ الْحَبَشَةِ, that a very thin man with thin legs, 2 thin legs from the area of Ethiopia will crush the Kaaba. يُخَرِّبِ الْكَعْبَ, he will destroy the Kaaba. And the scholars say the reason why that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow this to happen is because no one will face the Qibla anymore. Look at our day. Look at us today. Muslims who don't pray 5 times a day. I would like to think that the vast majority of Muslims in America still pray 5 times a day. And that's just me being optimistic. The average Muslim in America does not pray 5 times a day. I believe that. That's a belief that I hold. No matter how optimistic I would love to be, just in my daily interactions with Muslims, the average Muslim does not pray 5 times a day. I mean, think about all of the Muslims that you know, that in your circle, the people that you come in contact with on a day-to-day basis. Can you actually say the vast majority of the Muslims that you run into or come in contact with on a daily basis pray 5 times a day? I can't say that. I can't say. I've been the imam of a masjid, and the imam, I'm sure, can testify to that. Many people have walked into my office and just in conversation, it's like, well, brother, imam, I'm struggling right now. It's like, it's becoming an epidemic. Like, we don't pray 5 times a day, the bare minimum of Islam. And so when there's no more barakah, meaning that no one values the salat anymore, Allah will allow the Kaaba to be trampled upon. So marriage, much like food, that when one does not pronounce the name of Allah over the food, then there's no barakah in your food. Your food is not fulfilling. When you eat and you don't say Bismillah over your food is not fulfilling. You eat until you're stuffed because there's no barakah in your food. When you say Bismillah over your food, it only requires you to eat a little bit and you're full very quickly because the food has substance, it's filling, because it has barakah in it. What you're eating is not just the food, the physical food. You are also digesting the barakah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anything that you mention the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over, obviously that is halal, that it will have the barakah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Marriage functions the same way. So when we don't value the institution of marriage, Allah removes the barakah from it. So although brothers and sisters still get married, we see that there's no barakah in many of the marriages. No barakah in it. No barakah. Muslims are supposed to one of the greatest institutions that we have, which is marriage, and you find many of the brothers and sisters who are married miserable. How does that happen? How are we miserable in an institution that was designed to secure your happiness in this life? Your Jannah in this life is found in the institution of marriage with your wife. That's your Jannah. The Prophet ﷺ said to Aisha on his deathbed, he said, "Ma la ubali bil maut mundu an araftu annaki zawjati fil jannah." He said, I don't care about death from the moment I learned that you were going to be my wife in Jannah. Death means nothing to me. You are my Jannah on earth. Death means nothing to me. From the moment I learned that you were going to be my wife in Jannah, death means nothing to me. I don't care about death. This is the way their marriages functioned. Sophia went to being someone who said that the Prophet ﷺ killed my father, killed my brother, killed my husband. There was no man on the face of the earth that I hated more than Muhammad. And within the same day, she said, there's no man on the face of the earth that I love more than Muhammad. How does a man go to change a woman from hating him more than anybody on the face of the earth to loving him more than any other person on the face of the earth? How does that happen? Through the institution of marriage. But what has happened to our marriages? So I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, allow us to come back and understand the institution of marriage. I think for those of us that are married, I think we have to do a better job with showing how cool being married is. We don't represent marriage. We're too busy representing everything else that is wrong with the marriage instead of representing everything that is right with the marriage. What are we going to do? What is this next generation going to think of marriage when they see their mom constantly in and out of relationships? There's some Islamic communities, especially amongst African Americans, as we were talking last night, where divorce has become common in many of these communities. They've seen their mothers married 3, 4, 5 times. Like, what is going to happen to that girl who's seen her mother married 3, 4, 5 different times? Who goes to the masjid and 5 different brothers give her salams and seeing her because those 5 different brothers have been married to her mother at some point or another in her life. How do you go to the masjid and you got 5 different stepdads at the masjid? All different men that your mother was married to. What is that going to do to a man or a woman when they reach adulthood? How are they going to fare with it as it relates to marriage? What is the psychological implications that is happening to our children? And trust and believe, this goes on in every community. The immigrant community, Pakistani community, the East Asian community, the African community, East African community. It goes on in every community. So I'm not going to single out African American Muslim community like we're an anomaly. Like we're the only ones that's happening to, and every other Islamic community is flourishing and doing well. No, we all suffering. We're all suffering. And I lecture and I travel to many communities, not just African American communities. And I can tell you from my experience in my travels, it's the same place, the same thing everywhere you go. Everywhere you go, it's the same thing. So my question is, how do we change this narrative, man? How do we change this dynamic, man? How do we fix this? Question. I need the community to give me answers, man. How do we fix this? Assistance from the previous generation in their marriages. We know some of our parents have been married for 20, 30, 40 years. What can the elders in the community who have been married, what can they do to help better represent the importance of marriage? What can they do? Facilitate, promote, yeah. Make Toba. That's a starting place. Okay. Toba for what?
Our problems come from our remoteness from Allah, our relationship with Allah. We need to draw closer to Allah to improve ourselves. And our consciousness is about, everything that's outside, dunya, it's outside of ourselves rather than our souls.
Okay. He said that our starting place should be Toba, to repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that a lot of the problems that we having, in our relationships with one another possibly stems from our relationship with Allah and not necessarily the other person, right? It might be the starting point is our relationship with Allah. As Hassan al-Basri, he said, or Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, أَصْلِحْ مَا بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَ اللَّهِ أَصْلَحَ اللَّهُ مَا بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَ النَّاسِ. Rectify the relationship that is between you and Allah will handle the relationship between you and other people. So the starting place is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So maybe all of us need to, make 2 rak'ah and just go into sujood and make tawbah and ask Allah to forgive us for, any shortcomings that we've had in representing His religion, any shortcomings we've had, and, as a collective. I'm talking to you guys as a community, All right, so that's one thing. That's a starting point. We listen. We're being solution oriented here. So starting place, Toba. Let me get the brother in the back. Walaikum salam. Marry people who are pleasing to Allah. Oh, do what's pleasing to Allah in your marriage. That's a good point. If both husband and wife in the marriage made the bulk of their efforts in the marriage about pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not necessarily the other person, then you guys should meet somewhere in the middle. If you're trying to please Allah, she's trying to please Allah, y'all should meet somewhere along that journey and trying to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's like, hey, you're here. Oh, you're here. Okay, we're here together. I'm trying to please Allah. You trying to please Allah. Okay, we found ourselves on the same path, trying to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Absolutely. Yes. You got to speak up just a little bit. Wa alaikum salam. Okay. Okay. Okay, so let's broaden it a little bit. Let's broaden the language a little bit. She said the walis need to take the role of being a wali more seriously. Let's broaden the language a little bit and say maybe the Islamic institutions, the masajid, the Islamic centers can do better in creating a system that is more effective in servicing the brothers and sisters that are trying to get married. All right, so so we broaden the language a little bit so that we don't make anybody feel like it's a personal attack on them. You understand what I'm saying? Because it's not necessarily the wali, it's the whole system. It's the whole system. The masjid, the Islamic center, the whole system needs to be revamped. And the infrastructure needs to be put in place that is, the agenda is, or the priority is to serve the brothers and sisters in the community. And I think that many masajid have become very selfish. It's all about the masjid, about what is collected, whether it's on Jumu'ah, whether it's on the Eid, collecting the money and collecting this and paying the bills. And we've become so wrapped up in the institution itself that we forget about the service that we should be doing or providing for the people. You follow me? So it's the service, you know what I mean? And sometimes they say, as the saying goes, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of other people. So I think the masajid, Islamic centers, need to do a better job in serving the people instead of serving its own agenda. Many masajid work to build its name up, its reputation, its rapport with the larger community, and just sucking the people dry in order to establish that. It seems like somewhere along the line we forgot that the masajid are here to serve the people, not the people here to serve the masjid. No. Amen.
I think one of the things is unrealistic expectations. We just think everything will be all the time like the honeymoon period. Or either that person that we're marrying, some system expecting the brother to be, like Rasulullah says, the wives like Aisha.
Right.
And the reality is there will be some days because of unforeseen situations that you will have disputes. And most of us will have patience with those disputes. Like we just give up too easy. And I think part of the reason we give up too easy is because all the options is out there.
Ooh. Preach. Imam said we give up too easy because there are too many options out there. And we have unrealistic visions of what a real marriage looks like. So maybe we need to correct our understanding of what a marriage actually looks like. And we think that everything is going to be, the honeymoon phase is going to last for the duration of our marriage. And we fail to realize that it's not going to be good all the time. Right? Sister Naila, as I constantly promote her, this is a very, very beautiful sister, mashallah. Her and her husband, Brother Hassan Clay, they're out of Atlanta. They came to the marriage retreat this year. There's a marriage retreat that we have in the Poconos every year. Alhamdulillah, Sister Naila and her husband Hassan came to the marriage retreat this year. Sister Naila and Hassan, these are professional therapists, marriage relationship therapists. If you want your marriage fixed, you need to go see them. I guarantee you, if you are sincere in fixing your marriage, go see them and have them help you fix your marriage. On Instagram, they are known as That Clay Couple. On Instagram, you can find them on Instagram. Naila, she's very, very thorough when it comes to helping sisters identify some of the things that they're struggling with. And Hassan, mashallah, tabarakallah, he's one of those brothers, man. Mashallah, Quran, Sunnah, and he definitely has a way with his words and tapping into brothers who sometimes we may think that, marriage counseling is uncomfortable, but they are one of those people. They are a couple that actually makes you feel comfortable getting marriage counseling. They actually make you enjoy looking forward to sitting with them on Skype in front of the computer and having them go through these issues with you and your spouse. So if you are looking for marriage counseling, please go see that Clay couple on Instagram, inshallah ta'ala. But the Imam said that, we give up too easily. The moment we get into a rough patch, a rough space, we're ready to just toss the marriage out of the window because there's so many other options out there. All right? And when you take the options off the table, you'll find a way to make it work. If someone dropped you and your spouse off in the desert and told you y'all had to work together to find your way out of there, you would make it work. When we take the options off of the table, take divorce off the table, take all the other options off the table, you'll find a way to make it work. But if you keep telling yourself, I don't have to be patient with this, I don't have to stand for this, I didn't get married for this. But what did you get married for? I didn't get married to go through this. What did you get married for? What did you think this was going to be? Like a piece of cake? A walk in the park? These are two people who came from two different walks of life, two different sets of experiences, two different orientations to life. I mean, as I said before, a lot of the marriage problems that we experience in our relationships has a lot to do with where you fall, the category you fall into your own biological family. If you're first child, middle child, or last child. Did you ever stop to think about that? As a first child, what's called first child syndrome. The first child, research has proven that the first child is usually very independent, very selfish, very outgoing. If you take a first child husband, very independent, very selfish, very outgoing. You take a first child brother and you marry him to a sister who is a middle child. And statistically, the middle child is the one who is always looking for validation, always looking for attention, always looking to be a part of something greater than themselves because they're constantly looking for validation. You take a first child husband and you pair him up with a sister who is a middle child in her own biological household. What do you think is going to happen? You tell me what's going to happen. She's going to criticize him of being selfish. She's going to criticize him of not showing her enough attention because in her family dynamic, she's the middle child. She ain't never been showed enough attention. He's going to feel like she's dragging him down because he's more outgoing and he's more, independent, or vice versa. You take a man who's a middle child in his home, always looking for attention, always looking to be a part of a group, always looking to be a part of something greater than himself, constantly looking for validation, and you marry him to a woman who's a first child in her own family. She's very independent, very outgoing, very little selfish at times, right? What is she going to criticize him of? You got to think about these things. These things contribute greatly to the problems that we have in our marriages, and sometimes we don't even realize that. Or you take a first child, right, and you take a first child, that is the husband, first child, and you pair him with a woman who is the baby of the family. Now, the baby of the family is usually the latchkey kid that comes and goes as he or she pleases. The parents, actually, it was a mistake. They didn't even really want no more kids, and this kid kind of just slipped in there, right? The parents were really done with children, right? Parents have, surpassed that age where they chasing a little kid around the house. The baby usually gets away with murder. Doesn't have the same rules that the first child has, which is why the first child is usually envious of the last child. Because the first child is looking at like, Dad, you get away with murder. When I was your age, I wasn't allowed to do none of that. That's because you was the first child. The parents wanted to make it perfect. They wanted to do it right. They didn't want to make no mistakes. And by the time they got to the third, fourth, fifth child, the last kid, it's just like, man, they can do whatever they want to do. Turn the light off and the TV off when y'all ready to go to bed. I'm going to bed. You understand what I'm saying? So you take that type of child and you marry that child to someone who is a first child who's lived a very structured life, very independent, outgoing, and then you marry that person. So it's important when you're having a sit down with somebody to ask them, in your biological family, where do you fall in that? And that doesn't mean that they can't make it work. But you need to understand who you're marrying. and what their personal issues are going to be coming into your family, coming into your life. If the person has been married before, if the person has had a bad marriage, as Sister Naila says all the time, we got to unpack our bags, man. We carry a lot of baggage with us. You got to unpack that bag. You got to put that bag on the ground. You got to sift through that stuff, and you got to pull out some stuff that you've been carrying around with you. You a pack rat. You've been carrying this stuff around with you for years. Open that bag, unpack that bag, and take this stuff out and get rid of it. And leave the stuff in the bag that you need to take with you along your journey. Real talk, man. And these are all things that, inshallah ta'ala, the masajid, can reach out to people like Sister Naila, can reach out to people like Brother Hassan, can reach out to these brothers and sisters and invite them to the community to do workshops. It's not the imam's job to know everything, but it's the imam's job to know everybody that does know everything. My job is not to know everything. I'm one man. There's certain aspects to being the imam that some of us are not even equipped to deal with. But we are responsible for networking with other people and bringing other people in that can take care of those areas that we are not proficient in. He said, what do you say about the brother or sister who is the only child? They say the only child is insane. Psychology, absolutely. You didn't know that? The only child is insane, one step from being insane. Because you go in a room, you play by yourself, you talk to yourself, you got your own friends. Really. My oldest son was the only kid for 5 years. We used to have to search the house to find out where he was. He'd be in his room by himself in his little plaything, playing all by himself with his own imaginary friend. The only child is a step from being insane. That's not to say I'm joking, but I'm telling you the truth. But what I'm saying is that doesn't mean that the kid that's the only kid, the kid that's the only kid is very selfish. This person envisions, has these grandiose visions, may become very narcissistic. These are all traits of only child. So, and I'm saying this so that we become aware of where we fall in this category, in this hierarchy in our families, so that we can start to assess ourselves. Did I say anything about the first child syndrome, second child syndrome, third, that was not accurate? Is anybody in here first child in their family? Okay, this is my son right here. I can tell you he's all of those things. Selfish, outgoing, very, all about him. Absolutely. Middle child. I'm the middle child. I have an older sister and I have a younger sister, and I'm the only boy from my mother. So I'm crazy. You know that there's something inherently wrong with me. You understand what I'm saying? So, it's for us to be aware of these things, these nuances about ourselves, so that we can help our spouses learn how to teach them how to love us. We don't come with a manual. Nobody goes into a relationship and say, here's my manual. Read that and you'll learn all you need to know about me. We don't come with a manual. So how does the person that you're married to, how is that person supposed to know you, get to know you, and love you the way that you want to be loved? Except that you have to teach them. You have to teach your spouse how you want to be loved, how you want to be received. Or else you're silent about that and you just let the person love you the way they want to love you, and maybe that doesn't actually work out for you. Silent expectations don't get met. You can't be in a relationship with somebody and expect that they're going to love you the way that you want to be loved. You got to teach them, this is the way that I want to be loved. I want you to love me like this. Even if you can't do it right now, I want you to learn how to love me, but this is the way that I'm going to work. Because when you look at a person who is, I got you, Sheikh. When you look at a person that's in a marriage and they're being loved right in that marriage, you're getting the best out of that person, right? You are getting the best out of that person because that person is receiving what they need in that marriage. And when a person is receiving what they need, they're going to give you what you need. Right? It's just like you go work at a job and the boss make you an offer, sign a contract, and you being paid the money you want to be paid. Or you on work on time, you doing extra stuff, you doing all types of stuff at your job because your needs are being met. Same thing works in a marriage, functions the same way. And vice versa. When your needs are not being met in the marriage, you're going to get the worst of the person. You are going to get the absolute worst of the person because the person is not receiving what they need in order to function in that marriage. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier, like, how it's one of the worst things to be married to someone who doesn't practice Islam. What are your suggestions in terms of trying to get that person to practice Islam?
Okay.
When they abandon it.
I got you. I said that the worst type of person to be married to is someone who doesn't practice Islam. He said, but how do you get the person to try to practice Islam? Let me tell you something about human beings. Human beings don't change. Your perception of them changes, but people don't change. The biggest delusion that we have as adults is to believe that I can change somebody. You can't change anybody. People are who they are. Who you married is who you married. Accept that. That is the baseline foundation for human behavior. People are who they are. People don't change. Your perception of people changes, but people are who they are. That doesn't mean that people are not going to alter some things about themselves to try, but that has to come from within. That can't come from without. You can't do that. There has to be, it's just like a person who is obese, a person who is overweight. The only thing that can motivate them to lose weight, that has to come from within. That can't come from without. You can't say you need to lose weight. You're putting on some few pounds. You can't keep saying that to the person because that might have the opposite effect. That's not encouraging. For a person to wake up one day and say, you know what? I'm tired of seeing this image in the mirror. This is a personal journey that I am going to take. That has to come from within. So that change, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. That Allah will not change the condition of a people until what? There you go. That's my dalil. Allah will not change your condition until you do what? Until you change your condition. That's even as our relationship with Allah. And our relationship with one another as human beings is just an extension of our relationship with Allah.
But in a situation of marriage, it's not it's not like a friendship where you can sit there and be like, okay, well, you know what, this is my friend. I can distance myself from them because they don't have, like you just said, because they need to find that from within themselves. This is your wife, you're sharing a house with them. You have, you might have
Right.
children and stuff with them.
Right.
You have you have a family that you're accountable.
Well, let me ask you, did this relationship start off like that? Or did the person, something happen in their life during the course of the marriage that caused them to backpedal like that?
I wouldn't know that person. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not.
Well, I'm sorry. That was suggestive. I shouldn't have asked that. That's suggestive. No. What I'm saying is that there's a difference between, he said, and it's a good point. He said, well, it's not like it's like a boyfriend-girlfriend type of relationship. This is somebody you're married to. So you share the same home with this person. You might have children with this person. So you can't just like say, well, I'm going to distance myself from you until you get yourself together. This is a person that you got to kind of be in the thick of it with that person. And so my question to him was, well, did you marry this person like this? Or was the person actually religious when you married them and then something happened and for some reason they started to backpedal? If you married the person like that, then you got what you got. That's what your hands called for. You went into a marriage with somebody that wasn't religious from the door. You reap what you sow. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what you signed up for. But if the person was religious and then something happened to them in their lives and they begin to backpedal, then obviously you've seen them at their best. So seeing them at their worst doesn't really affect you because you understand the circumstantial is something they're going through. So it causes you to be more patient, to be more sympathetic, to be more caring and understanding, and to, approach them with mercy and compassion. Versus a person who you go into the religion from the door and maybe neither one of you were religious, but then, for some reason you started to venture off and, be more in tune with your deen, and you see the other person still stuck at that same place. You know what I mean? Like, that's who you married. You understand what I'm saying? And I'm not saying that can't change, but the change is not going to be initiated from somebody outside of them. It's not going to be external. It's going to be internal. They have to want to change. They have to value their marriage, their relationship, and see that if I don't change, I'm going to lose this. If they're not conscious of that, if they say to themselves, well, that's going to be his loss, then eventually that's going to crumble because they don't even value that. No.
So, but what if the person thinks they're doing the right thing, they think they're doing okay, and you're just trying to change, as you say, change them. Sometimes when you say, why you trying to change me? That's not that I can't.
Right.
And you know you're not going back to
Right. I get you. He said,
and especially if you love that person, you want them to, to try to come along the same journey
Right.
as you, to be a better Muslim, do things better Islamic, and then again, as you said, you married that person, that's who they are, but you just like, you know what, divorce. You don't want to say that, but because you love them. So
Right.
what do you do in this situation?
he's saying, like, what if a person believes that they are trying? They say, well, you're trying to change me, but I'm doing the best that I can. And it's like, no, you're not. But how do you say that to the person without discouraging them, without making them feel like what they're doing is not enough, right? Like you don't want to pronounce divorce on the person, but at the same token, you're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place with this individual. And I mean, of course, dua is we can never underestimate the power of dua. To get up in the third of the night, if you really love this person, you really care about this person, then you will make sacrifices for that person. Like getting up at the third of the night and asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to intervene. Because obviously, you can't do this on your own. So you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for his intervention, to intervene in this situation, to come in between that person and their heart. As Allah says in the Quran, وَعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ يُحُولُ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَقَلْبِ. And know that Allah comes in between a man and his heart. So you're asking Allah for his intervention. And I mean, you can be encouraging as much as you can and use encouraging words. Hey, can we pray together? Instead of telling the person, you need to go pray. Salat just came in, you need to go pray. Instead of telling the person to go pray, saying, hey, can we pray together? I learned a new surah today. You mind if I lead you in Salat? Can I recite that surah, inshallah? And hopefully the person will see that these things are important to you and try to follow you along that journey. And when you see the person following, you got to give them credit. Maybe they're not going to go as hard as you are. They're not going to be as enthusiastic as you are, but you want to give them credit for at least trying, you know what I mean? And try to do the thing, you do worship with them. Hey, listen, I got a few extra dollars. You want to go to make Umrah together? Let's go make Umrah. I don't know any woman who would deny going to make Umrah. Would any woman in their right mind ever deny the husband and say, hey, listen, I had a couple of extra, $1,000 to go make Umrah. Let's go over to Saudi Arabia and make Umrah. What woman would deny that? You understand what I'm saying? So, and this is, you making those sacrifices in hopes that it would have an impact. And I believe it would. Because if, some sister says, send that brother my way. No.
One of the situations we have in our communities is the younger people, the younger generation, who came into Islam, but they were already involved, seriously active, and I'm thinking about what can we as families do, suggestions to help them or support them, like extended families, like. He don't really make enough money to get his own apartment, for instance. That kind of thing.
Right.
He's working.
Right.
And families keep telling them be patient, fast, whatever. And then it forces them to start doing
right,
outside
exactly.
the code. So what can do you ever address that? And what is the recommendations or suggestions that you have to address our young people and how parents can support them? In the interim stage, while they were still in school, for instance,
right?
Get your education, blah blah blah. Yeah.
Okay, Imam brought up a good point. He said, how can families be more active or play a more active role in helping the young people maintain their marriages, get married and maintain their marriages? He said, you may have young people in the community that maybe the brother, he doesn't have a job, or maybe he has a job, but it's not enough to afford an apartment. can the families get involved and help, their children out and help them maintain their marriages or whatever the case? How can the families in the community play a more active role in helping the young people get married rather than telling them to be patient, and then that being patient turns into them talking with each other over the phone and possibly engaging in behaviors that are haram? I would like to say that as African Americans, we are the only group of people who do not support our children when it comes to those type of things. Every other community, even Saudi families. I lived in Saudi Arabia for 8 years of my life. Even Saudi families, when the man is not making enough money or whatever, even if he is making money, they'll build an annex to their home to accommodate their son and his new wife. I kid you not. We're the only group of people that when our children, even as it relates to inheritance, African American children are the only children that always have to start from the bottom. Our children don't inherit anything except our drama and our baggage. Our children don't inherit any of our money. They don't inherit our property. They don't inherit anything from us. And they're always starting from zero all the time. While other cultures, you have people right now from other cultures that are living in homes that used to be their grandparents' home. Grandparents died, left them the home. They're living in their grandparents' house. And they're raising their children. And they're preparing to give grandparents' home to their children. And they're going to go buy a condo, move somewhere else. You understand what I'm saying? We're the only people that don't support our children. So, in the Islamic community, maybe we need to break this cycle of allowing our children to just start from scratch all the time and extend ourselves to our children and be in service of our children when they're trying to get married. My son, right now, if he decided to get married right now, wanted to get married right now, there's no doubt in my mind that him and his wife are going to live with us. I want to be able to monitor that situation. And I'm going to be there to support them. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's, and I know many situations where, they've gotten married and they live with their parents, and we're the only people that look at that as like a blemish, a tarnish to our honor. Like, you got your grown son living with you. So what? Why can every other culture do that and it's totally acceptable, but for African Americans, we're the only people that have to live by these man-made standards that nobody else lives by but us? Nobody else lives by these standards but us. These are self-made standards that we created that came out of nowhere. Nobody else follows these rules but us. Every other culture, their children can get married, they can live in the house, they can stay on the third floor, they can have the whole floor to themselves. We're the only ones, oh no, you're 18, you got to get out of my house, you got to go get your own. Why do we do that to our children? Why do we continuously do that to our children? And we just create this cycle of just starting from scratch, reinventing the wheel all the time because we never leave our children behind with anything. So, it's important for families to be involved, to be involved in the process of marriage, and that will actually make the marriage easier. If you're a 16-year-old daughter, and it's more so with the brothers that have daughters, because we have these grandiose standards that we create for our daughters, because our daughters are like the biggest princesses in the world. So our daughters have to have the best. So when we're looking for a brother, he has to make a certain amount. He has to be of a certain, stature. He has to be of a certain caliber. And when he marries my daughter, you got to put her in a house. It's like, man, come on, man. You serious? The wives of the Prophet ﷺ used to live in rooms. They didn't have houses. They had rooms. Hujarat. They had rooms that they used to live in. Enough room for a bed and a small little stove. That was their living quarter. And they were totally content with that. Ibrahim alayhi salam left his wife Hajar and his son Ibrahim and Ismail in the valley of Mecca with a few dates and a water skin. Nothing. And they were totally content with that. But for us, nah, you coming from my daughter, because in our minds, and the thing about it is that we create these images in our minds of what we think is standard for our daughter. And to be honest with you, you want Muhammad for your daughter, but your daughter ain't Khadija. Real talk. You want Muhammad for your daughter, but your daughter ain't Aisha. Your daughter ain't nowhere near that. But you want all of this huge dowry, and it's like, come on, man, miss me with that, man. Come on, man, simplify this stuff, man. The simplest marriages are the marriages that have the most barakah in it. The Prophet ﷺ said the simplest marriages are the simplest dowries are the ones that have the most barakah in it. And that doesn't mean that sisters have to sell themselves short or choose, some mediocre dowry. But the dowry is not like, it doesn't depict your worth as a woman. It doesn't determine how much you value marriage because you up the ante on your dowry. But it's to show how much a man values marriage. Because if a man is willing to pay $2,500, $5,000 for a dowry, then that means that he really want to be a part of this. It ain't got nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with how much he values the marriage. If you set your dowry at $500 and he give you $250 and I'm gonna give you another $250 later on down, man, come on, man, mess me with that, man. Get out of here, man. Man, what do you think this is? You gonna give me $250 now, and you gonna give me $250 6 months later? Like, dude, why are you even getting married? Why are you even getting married if you can't afford $500 for a dowry?